Appreciate you carving out time of your busy schedules to sit here and learn a little bit about Autocash and deduction management workflow. I'm going to respect your time today. I have approximately a 35-minute presentation, and then after that time we can answer questions that you have that you've been thinking about or that come up during the presentation. So please do jot down your questions in the chat box. So, as I said, we're going to talk about Autocash processing and deduction management. And we all know that it's a complicated process and it's hard to administer. This is my little assistant that we have an explainer video on our website that takes you through many of the things I talk about today. But today's session will be discussing the building blocks needed to develop an Autocash process that delivers a 100% match rate. And during that process that you have an automatic deduction creation process. We're then going to look at the deduction lifecycle to see how technology and workflow can shorten the resolution process. There are 5 key modules of work that I'm going to be talking about: cash application, deduction management, the concept of collaboration, how the web system retrieval process works, and of course the end of the process actually collecting deductions. So when you think about best practices and best automation practices, what's going to really benefit your department? Number one, timely and accurate cash posting must be less than 24 hours. While this is happening, you're going to be minimizing held orders, and this is going to facilitate the order processing department and the customer service department and the warehouse department. Really try to minimize any holdups in the organization. When you use electronic data, you're going to get a lot out of it. So you really need to maximize how you use your electronic data. The last thing you ever want to do is reprocess electronic data manually. Taking advantage of automatic retrieval processes and creating deductions by accessing customer portals, retrieving that data electronically. And while you're doing this, this is all going to jumpstart workflow. And I'll walk you through some of the steps and what you'll experience when you jumpstart your workflow process. And lastly, optimizing the utilization of the staff, aligning skills, increasing employee satisfaction, and reducing employee turnover. Don't lose sight of that. This is really going to help your department be productive, a stable team. At the higher level within your organization, you're going to enjoy increased cash flow, increased profits, and your overall administrative workflow will be reduced. Collaboration portals are going to improve communication with not only your internal departments, but external departments. And by connecting with your trading partners, you're going to improve customer relationships. You're not going to need to contact them via traditional methods, if that is even possible. You're going to have some very happy salespeople, buyers on the other side. You're going to be a true trading partner. And then throughout the process, you want to look for a system that's going to define all of the procedures that you have organized, and that's going to allow you to meet all your internal audit and SOX requirements. So what I like to do is, at this point, just put together a series of cash processing keywords, things that you may be familiar with, things I'll talk about today, and I just put this up here, something like translation of data, or a concept when you're doing searches that begins with, or scrubbing of data. We're going to talk about these things, and so this is your glossary of key Autocash and cash processing words. So when you're looking at a cash application tool, what do you must have? What are critical components? Number one, a multi-currency, multi-business unit, and multi-company configuration. Right now, you may not be operating in a multi-business unit environment, but this is something you should have in place at the get-go of a system. When you do have the opportunity or the need to get involved in some of the businesses, you're going to be ready for it. User-defined business rules. You want a system that's going to allow the power user to configure and automate, configure the business rules. You don't want to have to rely on your IT department. And as you're configuring these rules, there's going to be some exceptions. There's going to be some outliers. So you need customer-specific business rules, something that's outside of the norm, because you're going to come up across that. The matching rules that you're going to take advantage of, they're going to be complex, dealing with discounts, grace days, and thresholds. Now, to be really effective in taking advantage of electronic remittances, I mentioned earlier, the automatic reassociation of remittance information with payments is critical. So that would be EDI remittance information coming into your shop, payments coming into the bank, and then how to connect those two, marry up or reassociate. And the standard formats for batch processing, BAI2 formats, CSV, EDI, Excel, to name a few, these all must be supported. Now, when you're looking towards the top tier types of systems, the Cadillacs, if you will, of Autocash processing systems, automatic deduction creation and cash on account coding. This must happen, especially dealing with mass merchandisers, pharmaceutical industry, CPG industry. There's a great deal of automatic deduction creation that must go on. Converting between custom codes and your reason codes. This needs to be an automatic process at the company level and then at the customer level, because you're going to get many different layouts and coding schemes from your customers. So you need to convert those into a standard set. Automatic assignment to workflow based on a deduction type and amount. For example, when you're creating, or Autocash is creating the deductions, the pricing deductions need to go directly to the person responsible or the warehouse, back to that shipping manager, to start to identify and indicate reasons for why these things may have happened. This needs to happen as part of your workflow. And when you're matching, you can't only rely on open items. You need to check both open and closed line items. An efficient system can do that in a matter of minutes. And then to create that 100% reconciliation of payment, you need to be able to create line item entries for those items not found. And when you're creating those line items, you're going to not only create the amount, but you're going to start to assign coding. You're going to assign key information for where the transaction, the payment originated, and make that part of the deduction or cash on account payment. So this way, this entry is also immediately put into your workflow, and someone can start working on it. So when you look at some of the details involved in the Autocash matching process, first of all, you're going to do, these are a series of operands that you go through, and you're going to match on different fields of information. So whatever information you can bring in to the system from your other core systems into your Autocash system, that needs to be done, and then create the matching rules to match up against the remittance information from the banks or directly from the trading partners. So let me go through these briefly. Remittance items, of course, the most common, things like exact matches to invoice numbers and PO numbers and reference numbers. In some industries, you might find success in matching against a total balance or a past due balance. Very important with some of the high volume retailing type customers, data cleansing and scrubbing of data. And what this means is it looks at the data that you're receiving and compares it to what you have, and then depending on where you need to do the strip or the removal, you remove that information from the respective side to get a match. And I have a nice example for you a little bit later on on how the data cleansing works. Matching, that's part and parcel to that data scrubbing, and do you do some equals or begins with, ends with type of matching. Tolerances, everyone's familiar with that concept of maybe an amount up to a certain percentage, so the $5 or 2% maximum kind of view of the tolerance. And then part of that is your automatic write-offs. You're going to facilitate the whole process by sending certain write-offs to the respective GL accounts without looking at them, because you know it's not cost-effective to attempt to recover cover it in your industry. And then discount handling, if you're offering discount terms, the unearned, earned, and tolerances and everything built around that. That's critical. So, let me take you through just a few rules in action, as I call it here, at a more detailed level. So, payment file matching process. I'm just going to change my pointer here for a second. So, each payment coming in is going to have a different format. And the key to understanding formats is some kind of record mapping or description, and this is going to come from your bank or from your trading partner of what the file looks like. So here, first a little snapshot here is the record description, the further description here about some of the grouping, and then once you have that, you can start to make sense of this information. And this is done at the beginning of a project. When you're starting up, you're going to do all of this mapping and configuration. It typically doesn't change during a relationship with a bank, for example, unless they dramatically change processes, or if you change banks, you need to go through the process of validating the new lockbox file format. Okay, another rule, reason code translation. This is where customer deduction reason codes are translated to your reason codes to ensure consistency and tracking across all of your customers. So when we're looking at a EDI format, the highlighted numbers are the position in the record that indicate the reason code. So if I were to look at my reason code 01 in the file, the 820 reason code, that needs to be translated into my client or your reason code scheme. So the 01 is translated to the 050. And this is done during the Autocash process. So when these deductions are created, they're set up on account, and your collection and deduction analysts know exactly what they're looking at. You always need to preserve the original reason code, but when you're talking to the customer, because they only know their codes, and your team is most versed in your own codes, of course. But there's always that cross-reference that is done during Autocash, and once again, it needs to be saved and captured in the deduction. All right, this was the strip search cleansing that I talked about a little bit earlier. This is where it's a known discrepancy in the data. You know that your customer is always going to give you a certain piece of information that doesn't mean anything to you, but you need to deal with it in your file. So this little series of instructions on the right, let's go through some of them. So the reference number, that's the item to be cleaned, and that's indicated by simple identification. Then the strip from operand. So in this case, I've selected strip from, and the indicator here, if you look, it's left or right. So from the right side of the data, I'm going to strip the K, H, and F. So when data comes in and you look at my sample line, and I have the K, H, F at the end, that means nothing to my internal line item. So before I attempt to match it, I'm going to remove it, and so you have the information that you could find in your own AR file. So and there's many combinations. You can strip a string, you could strip the beginning, you can strip special characters like this underscore if you have it in your file and your customer doesn't give it back to you. So this is going to create many more matches for you when you take advantage of this kind of cleansing process. So now let's move on to deduction management. And when you're creating deductions, the first step is after the creation is putting it into a workflow. And you can be determining where these deductions go based on dollar thresholds to accelerate resolution. A, you could have them automatically written off. B, you could send up to X dollars to a junior analyst. And if it's over $5,000, over $50,000, it should go to the manager or senior analyst handling that account. So you're going to prioritize and direct the deductions based on the importance to you. Okay. So now you've assigned it, you're tracking it, deduction lifecycle with reason codes and status codes. What type of deduction is it? Where is it in the process? Is it a new deduction that hasn't been touched? Has it been sitting in the collection deduction analyst queue for 5 days or 7 days? And that's beyond reasonable standard operating procedure for your organization. Has it been with the salesperson for a week? All of those type of status code changes and status code tracking is really important. Once you've created these deductions, you need a method to communicate them. So having communication tool to send internal notices to individuals, simply advising them it's time to work on something, or escalation, or the reverse of going out to customer portals is filing claims into customer portals systematically. So if someone is questioning a deduction of goods, and because of a short shipment, but you have a POD that demonstrates that it was actually full shipment, you can automatically attach a POD based on that retrieval and send it back and automatically log into a customer portal and register that. And this is all an automated process that is done really same-day kind of process. As soon as the deduction is created, a POD is retrieved, and you could file a claim, and you're on time in filing those claims. Everything you do in your system is going to have a secure audit trail of changes, balance changes, and this is an absolute requirement. You cannot shortchange yourself on not having solid audit trails. And through a good coding, root cause analysis is going to start to develop as you start to develop the intelligence of transactions that were resolved within X amount of days, those that took a week, those that took a month to resolve. You're going to start, as you start using the system, you're going to accumulate that intelligence and the root cause of the particular problems. And with that, quality reporting starts to be developed, where you have deduction days outstanding, collector performances captured, and what was the ultimate outcome of a deduction? Was it paid in cash? Was it credited? Those are the types of outcome resolutions you'll be able to capture. And then cross-departmental involvement. That's collaboration. You know, we all know that we're not going to resolve these on our own in the credit department. You need to engage different folks, and the best way, the best practice is to develop an organizational-wide understanding of each person's responsibility, and then introduce a tool that will allow you to meet that. And you just can't rely on emails and attachments to emails. It's just not going to work in a large-scale organization. It's going to take over. Things are going to get lost. With a system where you have a centralized database, everything is date and time stamped, nothing is going to just slip through the cracks. So a little bit about some of the specific deduction workflow configurations. As I mentioned, by types, you can have valid deductions and invalid deductions. You're going to have reason codes built in, balances based on who they go to, statuses, you know, who has it, is it with a salesperson, is it now been approved and someone is pending approval in someone's queue, and then reminders. Listen, some of this stuff really builds up, and you do need to remind folks that it's been a week, it's been a month. And the follow-ups could be within the system that you use. It could be email reminders, especially to people like field Salesforce, who will often not log into another system, but they'll be checking their email. So a good email reminder to some field sales folks is a nice piece of functionality. And of course, faxing to those types of companies that still rely on that. And then escalation. Should someone not act, does the management team need to know up the line, supervisors, managers, directors of finance, depending on the importance. And then I mentioned earlier about different forms and filing claims systematically at a customer's portal. That's the type of configuration and functionality that you should be looking for. So what I have here is an illustration, and I'm going to try to kind of walk you through a scenario, what happens. So think of this in Autocash and deduction retrieval in stealth mode. A lot of this is going to be happening overnight before anyone gets into the office. So during the cash application process, the deduction is automatically identified, created, and coded. Okay, this is a bank file, comes in at 8 o'clock at night, the process goes through, creates the deductions, and no one has touched this information yet, no manual touch. So depending on how it's coded, well, does a short shipment document, debit memo, need to be retrieved? So that can happen next. This can happen an hour later. Supporting documentation is retrieved from customer portals by automatically going out, pulling back in that debit memo and attaching it to the debit. So now you're starting to develop the intelligence. Why was this deduction taken? How was it coded? And now here's a debit memo from the customer portal. Okay. Now based on tolerances, deduction can be automatically approved or denied and put directly into the GL account. It can automatically be written off. Once again, we're in stealth mode. People haven't come into work yet. But when they come into work, the deduction is automatically assigned to them. They're sitting at their desk. They know they have 3 or 5 or 100 new deductions based on priority, and now they know what to work on. So everything so far has happened in the middle of the night. Now, yes, people need to start working on it, researching it, analyzing it. But for those who don't, we can have some escalation notice to an individual's manager, right, in action. And this needs to be part of your standard operating procedures. You can't do this without a complete buy-in within the organization. So you're starting to use your new coding, you're tracking the deductions, you know the status, you know where a particular item is in the resolution process. You're going to start to develop your intelligence, dashboards, reporting, and they're going to be provided to your analysts, to management, so everyone knows where a situation stands, what's working and what's not working. And then lastly, you're going to focus on collectible deductions. Now, my proposal is always identify those that are most skilled at speaking with customers, individuals that like to be on the phone. Some people like to do research. Some people like to be on the phone with customers. I think there's a lot of benefit by creating that differentiation in roles and identifying those who are best at the specific task. The holistic view is something that, of course, is often considered. My own personal opinion is that the specific skill set is the most effective way. So, what are the benefits of Autocash and this deduction resolution workflow? So, we're going to improve productivity, drive these processes, and reduce time on manual tasks. This is an operational efficiency. We're going to have better visibility. Some visibility is more than a lot of people have, and you're going to get excellent. Nothing's going to slip through the cracks. Transaction status is always known. And the fact that you know what's going on and what works, what doesn't work, you're going to be able to react to business changes. If something goes wrong, you're going to be able to identify it sooner than later. So if there's a recurring problem in your upstream processing, you're going to find out sooner than later. And then improving accountability. Okay, monitoring time to execute. See where your slowdowns and clogs in the process are currently at, and take actions to improve that. So when looking at best-in-class credit-to-cash workflow automation. What can you expect? Well, overall, we found that you can expect a 30% increase in cash recoveries and a 20% reduction in days sales outstanding. And as soon as you put these tools into place, you're going to immediately start to feel the benefits. A 25 to 50% reduction in administrative costs. With those manual tasks minimized and the unanswered emails, you're going to see a lot of benefit come out of there. And then the overall faster cycle time in deduction days outstanding. And who sometimes are your biggest vocal feedback? Where do you receive the most vocal feedback? And that's from your salesmen about the time they need to spend on deduction management. I think you'll find that a lot of time, up to 15% reduction in the salesperson's time spent on deduction management, because you have a workflow tool in place and the deductions are funneling through the organization. And so sales and customer service and your collection and deduction team are all going to be working in concert, and you're going to have a much more satisfied organization. And overall, the ROI we've seen with our clients is that it's typically less than 6 months on the SaaS investments. Tools that are implemented should be modular in nature, so you can roll out different modules as you see fit, whether you start slow and roll it out, or if need be, you go for a full implementation of a complete suite of products. But the ROI is going to be very quick. So I'm going to take you back to this sheet of cash processing keywords. I hope maybe you've added a few to your knowledge base, and that they'll help you when you're conversing with different folks and vendors and IT departments and colleagues at groups. You start to talk about how to implement cash application in the most efficient manner. For those who might have had some negative experiences early on in the life cycle of Autocash, and that could have been as recent as 5 years ago. Things have changed quite a bit. The precision that we're able to do this matching and our ability to interpret data has increased tremendously over just the last few years. So I hope you enjoyed and learned a few tips on my conversation today with you. I'm with the Smythe Credit Tech organization, and I represent this family of companies. Our group companies that include Smythe, our outsourcing group that you may have heard of. Corixa is the world-class credit-to-cash software. Our affiliated company, Credit2B, Credit Information Network, and Live is a first and third-party collection agency that is under our umbrella. So when working with us, we have these different companies and expertises at our disposal in supporting your credit-to-cash needs. So that concludes my presentation today, and I think we're ready to take some questions.
Okay, Tom, can ACH and lockbox files follow the same file format?
Yes. Lockbox banks can provide all the key information off of an ACH payment, and this is the remittance information, and the lockbox information in the same file format, and they can deliver that to you seamlessly in the same file transmission.
My company has 2 different ERP systems, and we want to move to a single lockbox. How would an Autocash system handle separating the cash postings and sending them back to the correct ERP system?
Okay. So that sounds like maybe there was an acquisition or a couple of companies were merged. So we have a few different ERP systems, and the organization wants to trim down some of their lockbox processing costs. So what you need in that case is a incoming identifier on your transactions. So something's coming from ERP system number 1, and there's another transaction coming from the ERP system 2. And as long as you know where the transactions are coming from, and after the matching process takes place, you know where to send back that particular payment information. So the key is identifying it in the database, and then when you have done the actual posting, you're going to create files. This goes to ERP1, this goes to ERP2, and in those files will be the respective control numbers and balancing information that needs to be part of every file going back.
Next question. What type of reporting tools are available?
Well, different vendors provide tools within their own software packages that they provide, but all of these third-party providers should allow you to access the different databases using crystal reports, any kind of dashboard package that you might have, and access that information. I mean, you're going to be focusing on collector performance, time in particular status codes, that kind of trending. That's going to give you a lot of root cause information. So both the vendors provide some of the reporting, and then you can use third-party tools to access the database and generate your own reports.
Next question. Our sales force would probably not want to log into another system to help us with deduction management. How can we get them involved with the least effort as possible?
Yeah, common problem that hard to get a salesperson to log into yet another system. So sending them the information, sending them an email with a link in it, telling them you have these 3 deductions that have been assigned to you. They can click on a link, open up the information, they can respond, they can code, and then you establish that collaboration. They can do that from their computer, they can do that from their phone. So you really take out a lot of the objections to supporting you by allowing that very flexible communication through phone, laptop, and through email.
At this time, there are no further questions. With that, we are going to close today's webinar. I would like to thank Tom for taking the time to present to our group today, and thank all of today's attendees for taking time out of their day to join us. Thank you all again, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar.
Thank you.